I'm going to do a comprehensive overview of Amazon shipping solutions, even e-commerce in general. So everything from AWD, AGL, I'll explain all these acronyms later. But everything to do with Amazon shipping into Amazon shipping out to the customer, full journey basically, hidden programs that Amazon has that are very, very underrated and actually very valuable. And how you can some tips at the end on how to, for example, one of them is how to protect inventory, very cheap cost, even integrating omni-channel solutions. We're starting to integrate other omni-channel solutions, whether it's TikTok Shop or Target or Walmart, how to integrate those in the logistics and e-commerce. And also I'll actually show you how you can get access to these slides at the end. And last year we shipped $1 million through the Amazon ecosystem on its own. So into Amazon, out to customers, 1 million units, sorry. And I'm going to walk through what programs we used, how we saved money the most, and everything we learned from those lessons and that shipping process. Logistics is extremely underrated. It's actually crazy. It drives e-commerce performance. One third of all e-commerce business costs are usually related to supply chain logistics, and so this is related to the shipping costs. Everything to do with that. It has a huge impact on conversion rate because the shipping speed is a big factor, and I talk about that a lot. But also working capital, so it also has indirect costs and impacts of having effective logistics. So we want to make sure we nail it because it has effects beyond just the minor scope of just simple shipping. It actually has, like I said, CVR impacts, inventory, working cash flow impacts. And at the end of the day, e-commerce is just about two things. It's about selling the product, which is marketing it, PDP changes, etc. Well, it's often very forgotten is moving the product, especially in today's AI hype. It's not getting enough love. So I hope that we'll cover it fairly thoroughly in today's video or walkthrough. So everything all the way from the factory, inbounding it to Amazon. So the various programs, this is how we're going to start. We're going to start with these programs to inbound them into Amazon, then storage solutions, and then last but not least is the actual outbound to customer. Then there you have your happy customer getting your proper product, hopefully, once you implement a lot of this stuff. So going everything starting with these and then going all the way up to here. So what's the first one is AGL. It's also known as Amazon Global Logistics. It's a global freight forwarding. It's actually gives you discounted AWD storage access, which we'll get into later. They have an integrated rate. It's becoming less lucrative, but it's still there. The cool thing about AGL, it basically helps you ship your products from international brokers to it's international shipping solution. So it's a freight forward carrier, and they're opening more lanes. They're rapidly expanding, as I mentioned at the end over here. Let me move this over here just to have it be easier. But they're also introducing DTP, so that's great. They have the best reps at AGL. So again, it's like amazing, very active, very proactive. They give you their WhatsApp number. I meet them at Accelerate. Our team is very close with them. They're great reps, and they offer very competitive rates. They are fairly timely. They got much stronger, and they're also expanding into other countries. So they opened Vietnam. I think they're going to start shipping to Canada soon. So new inbound and new outbound lanes for basically pickup and delivery. Once you set it up the first time, everything becomes auto populated in the portal. So also makes it fairly easy, simple to use, good rates. When you shouldn't use it, sometimes it's just the prices are just high. You still should RFP with other vendors, but I'll get into the other options later and explain the difference between each one. So obviously, another option to inbound to Amazon. This is domestic version of AGL. You can think of it, but actually Amazon owns it themselves. So basically Amazon Freight is Amazon Trucks. Now they also opened LTL version. It used to only be full truckload. I think last year they introduced less than truckload. And very reliable drivers, very good appointments. They come pick up your product, usually good prices. It has its own portals. You also get your own rep. We actually had a rep visit our Minneapolis office 6 or 7 months ago. They have drop and hook capabilities. So for example, we have to fill up a truckload, but it takes us 2 or 3 days to fill. We have them leave their truck at the loading dock and you fill it up and they come pick it up later. So it doesn't have to be live loading and unloading, which is also a nice feature. Also, another thing is actually pretty cool. It's not just for FBA. So let's say what we want to ship stuff from one warehouse to another. We also use Amazon Freight and get bids from there. It's live, real time bids. So it's pretty cool. It's on the portal. And we get to see what rates look like compared to other vendors where we have to email and wait for an email back. It's pretty seamless. So, yeah, it's a domestic version of AGL. It's also Amazon in house, operated, all that stuff. So then we have this is all, again, all inbounding options to uh, Amazon fulfillment centers, basically. And I'll explain what all of them serve. So PCP partnered carrier program. This is the one you see within the Seller Central portal. It supports all options. The only one that actually I think supports SPD competitively, so small parcel delivery. So if only shipping a few boxes, I think this is the only option you have as of recording this. They sometimes have for very crazy competitive rates. I have this funny story in Las Vegas who were quoting, and we went to Amazon Freight and all this kind of stuff. Like, let's just try the PCP, see what happens. And they gave us, so PCP is just like a brokerage, so it's not actual Amazon owned or operated. Sometimes it is. And they quote Amazon Freight on there, so Amazon Freight is an option within PCP. But what we got back was $1 per pallet, and it was with Uber Freight. So it was kind of funny. I'm sure it was like probably technical error. We wouldn't bank on that, but we still took advantage of it. Actually delivered. It was in the September of last year, so 2025. So only native option. However, the SPD is becoming more expensive. UPS and Amazon are not in good terms lately, so it's becoming more expensive. But these all one thing to keep in mind is that PCP and Amazon Freight are very competitive. Even though PCP quotes Amazon Freight doesn't get full credit for that. So the funny story is Accelerate. I was at Amazon Accelerate with our team, and I met the PCP rep and I met the Amazon Freight rep, and they're both trying to get time with us to basically. They kept claiming this guy works under us. It was a funny struggle between both of them to win the business that we have, and they were willing to visit you in the office, and they're willing, and that's why you have to keep good contact with them. At the end of the day, we each program has its own function. We're not using PCP that much, just being honest. It's the issue, the biggest issue we have with PCP is that the random drivers and deliverers, there's some crappy ones on there that they tell you today, they come in next week. Yes, you can email and they're going to remove them, then you get another one. But Amazon Freight is always Amazon Freight. It's not a brokerage. So they're more reliable, more dependable. They also get on unloading, they get some kind of a priority because they're Amazon in-house. So compared to PCP, where it's not, they don't get that. They do get competitive rates. They are seamless. They have their advantages, but we've again, each one has its pros and cons. But that's just one of the biggest drawbacks that we've seen is sometimes the quality of the carriers that are participating in PCP and their reliability. And then obviously for all of these, whether it's international or domestic, you have direct. So a lot of times we're getting good rates direct from international shipping, and we're not using AGL. So we're shipping it with an international broker that is a freight forwarder that's we work with directly. Or even here, we need to ship stuff to Amazon FBA FCs. For some reason, it's expensive to a certain hub. We quote our own brokers and we see what the prices they give us, and it's been great. So it also helps keep options open, rates competitive, compete with each other, because at the end of the day you want to let them know that you have options and you want to make sure that they're it's being as competitive as possible. So also if you're using a direct relationship with a freight, sometimes we have a certain quota we have to reach for certain lanes, so we use them to fill that quota to Amazon FCs that helps us reach it. So various reasons you need it. A backup option, again, more operational setup. It's not you have to kind of on your own to get insurance, contracts, pricing, all that kind of stuff, but it's still a valid option that we use frequently depending on the situation. So now that we're done with the inbound option, now we can get into the storage options. Obviously, the main one that Amazon opened recently was AWD. Amazon Warehouse and Distribution is the acronym. So it's a bulk storage network. It was actually born in right after COVID. Amazon was anticipating, I think, a lot of growth, and they were more than expecting, and they built a lot of warehouses. And what they found is a lot of these warehouses were not as filled as they would like. So they wanted to win 3PL business, so they started doing storage services. And in fact, they punished anyone that used FBA as a storage solution. Back in the day, they used to have you do free removal orders from FBA at certain periods. Now they don't do that at all. They raise the prices. They have Q4 rates at FBA. So it's very, very inefficient to store at FBA, and you're better off storing at AWD. Inbounds into Amazon, there's a lot of reasons, as I mentioned here, that you can use them. But that's just some of the background behind some of this and why it's useful and why it's born. And again, you can inbound into it, and there's various programs connected to AWD that I mentioned later. But again, some of the things with AWD is there is some auto replenishment features, but it's not as efficient as we'd like. It gets backlogged. It's still a newer program compared to other ones, and it's not as efficient as technical. So we have, for example, one of the products we went out of stock for. It took them 4.5 weeks to inbound it to Amazon FCs. We had to inbound it manually. Again, that's why we go direct, because AGL, Freight, Amazon Freight was all backed up. So we used our own broker, inbounded direct to an FC for an FBA. But AWD, you just have limited control because Amazon is ingesting through its own logistics, supply chain carrier networks to FCs. Again, it's getting more reliable. It's usually good, but this is an example of a product that was out of stock for 3.5 weeks, even though it was an AWD. Because of this, it wasn't technically out of stock. It shows back ordered, but again, it kills conversion rates. So that's one of the things where it could be an issue. It helps you avoid placement fees. Obviously, AWD is good when you don't need specific pack. You don't need to make case packs. You need to edit your product or quality control. Again, you're getting it straight into Amazon. Amazon, let's say you're shipping AGL into AWD, you're not really seeing your product. So if it needs specific product expansions, AWD does not do that. Neither does FBA anymore, which we'll get into later. They're expanding this program, but also reduces the operational burden. It's seamless to set up. It's an option there. Auto replenishment is auto replenishment. It's fairly reliable. I'm not going to crap on it. It's actually pretty good, but you still have to keep an eye on it to make sure you're in stock and everything's appropriate. And then we obviously get into notorious FBA. FBA is kind of at the bottom of storage, beginning of outbound to customer. It shouldn't be used as storage, but technically it is used for a few weeks on end as you organize things. Obviously, most mature, I think, was born in 2007. Uh, Even the biggest sellers on Amazon use FBA. So it shows you how strong it is. They can't compete with FBMing it themselves unless certain categories. So unless something is huge, then FBA becomes a little bit less efficient, or it's hazmat, or there's certain product classifications where it's not as good. But as long as it's basic shoes or basic standard items or whatever, the biggest sellers, billion-dollar sellers, didn't build their internal warehouses because of the strength of FBA. So it just speaks to the robustness of the program. Uh, Challenges is right now there's a little bit of there's with FBA you can get same day shipping, 1 day shipping, 2 day shipping. The conversion rate between 2 day shipping and same day shipping is almost 16 to 30%. So it's significant, and a lot of times you don't have as much control over that as you like. There's ways to get around to get sending it to certain hubs, distributing your product, avoiding a lot of times placement fees, or even using placement fees strategically based on the certain situation. But that's something to keep in mind is you want to aim for that same day shipping for customers, but you don't control it compared because Prime technically is same day shipping, but it's also 2 day shipping. But you want the Prime with same day shipping, so that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes the Cubiscan classifications, Amazon over exaggerates the product size or the product classification, so you have to audit to make sure it's accurate. There's a tiered fee structure they have to understand really well. If you're at the edge of one tier structure, see if you can optimize it for the one beneath it and how you can move it in because it's very expensive. There's inventory. There's using as storage is one of the biggest mistakes. There's inventory age surcharge fee, which used to be called LTSF, and then there's a Q4 peak. There's just too much things. So you want to make sure you're as crisp as possible. That you're only paying FBA mostly for fulfillment, not all the other stuff. Not inaccurately them charging you charging you more for tiers and so on. And then MCF, so this is multi-channel fulfillment. Amazon is expanding this. Before they were more protective. Okay, we want our inventory to be for us, and other marketplaces were protective. So Walmart, it used to be against its terms of service to use MCF for its products. Now they agreed to it. Target still not allowed, for example, but more marketplaces are becoming more, they're starting to talk to each other. They're starting to become more accepting of other solutions. So MCF is kind of that, where you can ship it from FBA to any other place. You can ship it even to, let's say someone buys from you from Shopify or D2C. I know a lot of D2C platforms that are using MCF to ship to their customers. So that's one thing. Is you can also white label it. It doesn't have Amazon branding as a default. It's high quality. You're getting the same services an Amazon customer would. So Amazon shipping with the 0, 1, and 2 day shipping. So you're using very reliable shipping standards, and it's built for the growth and the future of omnichannel. And it's a very legitimate service. There's some fees obviously attached to it. I think it's very similar to the FBA fee, just the fulfillment pick and pack fee, obviously, not the referral fee. You don't pay that with MCF, but it's a very formidable solution. And again, all of these you could just type it to Google MCF Amazon or AWD Amazon or Seller Central, and you'll get the Amazon's latest piece that's updated live to read on what's exactly going on there. So this is just a seller's experience on it, our experience shipping 1 million units, and some stuff maybe that they won't share, or just the kind of the truth on some of that stuff. Buy with Prime. This is actually another one that they're expanding rapidly. So this is where you go to Shopify. You can buy with Prime, and it automatically lets you add it to your cart, and you get to buy it. And obviously, it's powered on the back end by MCF. So you're paying through Amazon service. It's integrated seamlessly. Even in your cart and checkout, you can have customers buy stuff that's buy with Prime and not buy with Prime in the same cart checkout. CVR impact can vary. I've heard various reports whether CVR improves or decreases. Usually, if someone's going to Shopify, they want to buy from Shopify, but sometimes they like that it's Amazon backed. So there's, again, it depends on the type of website, the trust and reliability. But that's what we see. There's a 3% Prime service order fee, and then it's powered by MCF on the back end. Other programs that are also very formidable and very reputable. So MCD is one that we liked a lot. It's very underrated. It's multi-channel distribution. So this is kind of the MCF version for AWD. It's you can't just ship one or two items. It has to be pallets at a time. But one example is we need products for Target, and we ship AGL to AWD. But again, we can't use AWD to FBA for Target because we can't MCF from Target, MCF for Target. So what we do is we bring a pallet into our own warehouse. So we do MCD from AWD to our own warehouse, and then from our own warehouse, we ship it regular to customers. So that's an example of where MCD is very useful. You want to recall a pallet, you want a pallet for another marketplace that you don't want to use MCF for some reason. As I mentioned, one example specific with Target, MCD can be valuable. ABS, Amazon Bulky Services, again, and these are all the Amazon links. You can even search them on your own. But basically, ABS is Amazon solution for bulky big products. It comes from the name. It offers specific discounts. I think it's even like 15 or 20%. So significant discounts. And we've used it for larger items. And we can opt into this program. Obviously, business reps, Amazon business reps can be very helpful in setting this up. But that's useful. And then Amazon shipping is basically a new solution that Amazon's coming up with. They're not new, it's newer, but it's competing with UPS, FedEx, just regular ground shipping. And it's actually very, very competitive, to give them credit. For UPS and FedEx rates, especially for larger items, we've seen very competitive rates. So Amazon shipping is on the up and coming, and it's again another supply chain solution that they're taking very seriously. And you can see how big of a deal the supply chain solutions are by how serious Amazon is taking this, and they're building all these various programs because of how integrated it is and how related it is to their retail solution and e-commerce in general. Some other solutions, NARF, North American Remote Fulfillment. This is one of my, I don't want to talk too negatively about it, but it's one of my least favorite. Let's just say it that way. It's very, very inefficient for us. We had it open for Canada and Mexico. Eventually, we just ended up shipping our products to Canada directly. First of all, our sales exploded compared to NARF, which was expected, right? Customers don't have to pay customs. We dealt with all the technical stuff when it got there. So we're using Amazon FBA Canada fulfillment centers directly. But the other issue with NARF is that returns were handled very inefficiently. They were very expensive because they had to be returned to the US fulfillment center, and they were very frequent because the listings weren't translated 100% appropriately. There was so much issues. The customs, they don't know how to deal with it. So there's just so much. The returns were more, but they were also more expensive. So as a percentage, they happened more frequently, but they're also more costly. And it just made zero financial sense for us to keep this program alive. Instead, we just ship directly. And then obviously 3PLs with your own warehouse. It's just using a third-party logistics services. There's so much out there that you can store products in. They can ship it directly. They can handle everything all the way. Where they depends on the 3PL and specific services, but that's what they do. And then GWD, this is a very, very exciting development that we're actually, Amazon invited us to the beta program, and hopefully we're going to start using it soon. But it's global warehouse distribution. So it's kind of like the difference between Amazon Freight and AGL, Amazon Global Logistics, is one is domestic and one is international. That's what this is. AWD is the domestic version, and GWD is the international version. Now they're opening it in international hubs, and we're not sure if it's bonded or not yet, but it's a very interesting solution. It could be very helpful because we manufacture, let's say in China or whatever. We want to store products there. It's before shipping them, we can store them and ship them to FBA directly rather than shipping them to AWD. It could be cheaper. There's many different reasons we could use this. Once it becomes more mature, I'll probably make a video explaining it. But it's a very exciting program. And then there's obviously returns and reverse logistics. I won't get into this too much. It wasn't the primary context of this specific video. But this is FBA grade and resell. Also newer solution. I think introduced it at 2024 Accelerate, or 2025 accelerate. Sorry, not 2025, definitely not 25, but 2024 or 20 before that. But yeah, so basically, Amazon automatically classifies which, if your item is used, they can sell it, they can resell it themselves. We don't use this, we don't opt in for a lot because it's not as good. It doesn't classify it appropriately. We don't get the most bang for our buck. Liquidation program is where Amazon liquidates your returns rather than sending them back to you. And they all, this is kind of one of the craziest things for the liquidation program. Not only, so I have an example, a product, we sell it for $200. Amazon gives us $30 on each liquidation item, right? It is what it is. It's very heavy. We still opt in for liquidation program because we rarely get it back. We can't resell it again. It's a very intimate item, but it's also rarely working. So it's not really useful to get back to us because we can't resell it. And so we don't mind liquidating it. But one of the frustrating things is they're paying you almost 10 cents on the dollar, so 10% of the retail value. The thing is, actually, it retails for 250, so right around it's 12-13%, and they're charging us a liquidation fee on top of that. So 10% of that, so the $30, they take $3 as a as a fee for already buying it at a discount. So it's just very funny, frustrating thing with Amazon on this aspect of things, and but it is an option for, again, depending on if your returns are not as useful, or they're very expensive to ship back to you, the removal order fee. It could be something. Just do a cost analysis and see what it looks like. And actually, one important one that I didn't jump into too deeply, SIPs, ships in product packaging. So this is something that they're very heavily opting products into by default. So make sure your products aren't opted into by default, but you do get a credit sometimes, so it may be worth it. But the reason is that your returns become unusable because Amazon is putting a sticky adhesive to your item that cannot be removed. And if it's removed, it damages the product. And you're shipping in the product, so you can't reuse the product because if you remove the adhesive, Amazon doesn't put a box on the item. And it's actually a very, go read about it. You could save fees. So if your product is more robust, and I did make videos on SIPP in the past. If your product's more robust, the product package is not irrelevant. It's a giftable product. It could be a relevant program. But again, you have to keep that in mind as you work through SIPP, and you see the viability of your product and if it's applicable to it, and if it's something you should specifically opt into. Where to start and some kind of low hanging fruit or tips, or some people call them hacks. I don't like the word hacks, but we'll just get it that. Run regular cost analysis, run RFPs. So if you're, for example, doing inbounding to Amazon, we check Amazon Freight versus direct versus PCP. And that's how we got the $1 rate. So we consistently ask our team members to run RFPs for almost every single shipment. And at least overall general quarterly, we even look for new vendors. So that's something to keep in mind, and then compare what would it cost in just into AWD versus 3PL. These are two different solutions. What does this cost all the way through? Don't just look at, that's one issue we see people do, is they only look at one certain fee. Okay, I don't pay this fee here, I don't pay placement fees here, I for AWD, but and 3PL pay placement fees. Okay, I'll choose AWD. But AWD, you're paying other fees, right? You're paying, for example, a certain storage fee that maybe is much more expensive than your own. So make sure to run an apple to apple comparison as you're doing this. Also, a lot of solutions are negotiable. Surprisingly, AGL, you can negotiate rates instead of the street rates because if you have a certain volume. Again, if you don't have volume, it's not negotiable. But a lot of these stuff are more negotiable than you think. And then always check Amazon Direct for. That's why I said go to the links. They're updating, evolving as solutions become more mature. There's more complexity added. There's different fee tiers. Just to be a simple example, now it was simply when it started referral fee, pick and pack fee. Now there's a Q4 surcharge. There's inventory age. There's a low inventory level fee. There's so much more fees as the solution becomes more mature. There's more nuance to it. It becomes more examples. This is actually one of the tips, and I liked it a lot, is for time-sensitive shipments or high-value shipments, you can buy an AirTag for $20 and you can track it fairly seamlessly. And it's been very helpful for us, especially domestic shipments, obviously. But we want to see the specific tracking on something. We just put it in there. It's very valuable. Put it in there. And if God forbid anything happens, we have an eye on it. And then you have to separate between your storage and fulfillment strategy. Again, never use FBA storage. That's a big thing to keep an eye on. And you want to optimize your product to the specific shipping strategy used. We don't see people doing this enough. I'll mention another example with AWD. They charge $2.40 on a per box processing fee. And one of our partners, they had a box that only had 3 items in a box, and I think it was what was it, 15 pounds. And we told them, why is it 50 pounds? Like, oh, that's the factory gave us a good rate on that. It's just the default pack that they have. But then with 15 pounds, AWD, the maximum weight limit is 50 pounds, and they're charging you fixed fee per box. So let's say it was $2.50, 3 items. That's around, what is that, 80 cents an item. So let's say we could actually move it up to 10 items. Technically, we went to 9 just to be on the safe side, 45 pounds. But we went to 9, right? And that tripled the capacity, and we still were under the 50-pound threshold. But now we're paying $2.50 for 9 items. So what does that get us to? That gets us to approximately 30 cents an item. So again, this went down from, on this specific item, from, you're saying 80 cents to 30 cents. More than half saved on a per item basis. But we had to edit it based on that. If we weren't using AWD, perhaps another 3PL, they charge on a weight, or they have a certain threshold to go up, then we take that into consideration. So you want to look at the certain solutions we're using and optimize our product for that specific solution. Again, you have the specific product here. Is it large, oversized? Okay, if I trim off half an inch, I can go into standard size. Okay, that's worth it. Let's trim off the inch. Let's look at what it looks like there. So evaluating your product and making sure it's, when possible, aligned with your shipping solution is a very, very helpful strategy. So I hope that was helpful. If you want more of this, you can, again, I'll put the link in the description for the slides. If you want to partner with us to help you with your Amazon solution and make sure you're growing your brand, come check us out at Voadera, book a strategy call with an expert.